Eric Wood, who is the color analyst on the broadcast. And Eric, I've got to start here because I made the mistake of watching all of the national shows that review the week that was, whether it's Good Morning Football or Sports Center or what have you. And I really just want the Bills to get some honest-to-goodness credit. I mean, the talk about the Detroit Lions defense being decimated by injury and how they climb back into the game, in my estimation, 3 minutes left in the third quarter, it's a 17-point game. And let's not forget, the Bills had 325 yards of total offense in the first half. This was not as close as the final score indicated. Please help me.
Yeah, well, then they all need to switch up their power rankings because everyone had Detroit number one in the NFL last week. So if all the analysts that picked against the Bills last week and also say that the Lions were the best team in the NFL coming in, were they just the best offense? Is that what they thought? They weren't the best team. They were just the best offense, or they were previously number one in the power rankings, and they got healthier on defense this week. Now, they lost guys during the game as well, but they got 3 defensive linemen back for this game against the Bills. And so, yeah, I mean, we could talk about injuries as well. The Bills played in that game yesterday with 3 guys out in the secondary. Matt Milano leaves with a groin injury. The Bills have their own issues as well. And so, you know, you can miss me with all that, and that's okay. You know, ultimately, they're likely not watching every second of the game and not every second of the Bills season like we have to see this progression, to absorb it each and every week. Yes, we could talk about, you know, the injuries on Detroit's defense, but the 7 other teams we played in previous weeks, consecutive previous weeks, couldn't hold the Bills to less than 30 points. So, you know, it is what it is. And you know, as much as they're taking away maybe from, you know, the win because of because of the defense being banged up for Detroit, everyone's sure giving Josh Allen his credit today.
Yeah, I'll say this too. It was almost an admission by the Lions that they had no answers when they're going for an onside kick, 12 minutes left in the fourth quarter. It's the earliest onside kick I have ever witnessed.
It's the earliest one this year.
And I got to tell you, I kind of get it. I thought it might have been the right call. It falls right in line with Dan Campbell. Certainly, they had to have some things. And even after that kick, they still got it back to where it was a 6-point game and all the timeouts and stuff. Their offense was really humming, just like the Bills was. But that onside kick at the beginning of the fourth quarter was an admission, like, we got no answers for this, and we're going to have to get the ball back more than once to in succession to have a chance at winning this game, because they're going to score again. We figured it, and certainly the Bills did.
Yeah, we saw it last week against the Rams when they decided to go for it on 4th and 5 as opposed to try and make it a 5-point game. They go for it and end up scoring a touchdown on that drive. But you're seeing the amount of respect that Josh Allen and this Bills offense is getting. Historically, it's a 7% chance that you get an onside kick. And so, you know, you're saying your defense has a worse shot at that than holding them from points here. Now, they kicked 2 excellent onside kick attempts. So, you know, maybe Dan Campbell saw what he needed to see in practice and said, this isn't a 7%. This might be a 40-60 ball, the way we can kick onside kicks. I mean, the one, Mac Hollins barely gets a fingertip on it. Now, does that ball go out of bounds if it goes over his head? Potentially. And then the other one, the dribbler to Taron Johnson, that was another really good attempt. So he, you know, obviously he had some confidence in that, but it's an ultimate sign of respect. Those, you know, when you get to the point where teams are saying, we got to either try and steal a possession or we cannot give them the ball back. And we got to at least be up 7 if the Bills get the ball at the end of the game, because they're going to win it otherwise.
Let's talk about the defensive performance here, Eric. As you said, both starting safeties out, a starting cornerback out, and the defensive line really had to come to play, especially after playing below their standard the previous week. And they come out and they light it up. I mean, first of all, they completely neutralize a run game that's been one of the best in football. They have never gone for under 100 yards all season in any game, the Lions. And they basically neutralize that run game to the point where David Montgomery's on the bench by the time they're on their 3rd possession. They also get 25 total QB pressures on Jared Goff in the game, the most he has faced all season.
Yeah, it was an impressive effort, especially by the guys up front. And you always got to examine some things when you give up over 40 points in a game defensively. But when you look at the way the defensive line started out the week getting called out after the Rams game, and Ed Oliver in particular, those guys got called out, and then they showed up to play yesterday against an offensive line that many say is the best offensive line in football. A lot of people think Frank Ragnow is the best center in football right now. Penei Sewell likely the best right tackle in football. So collectively, a lot of people have given him that title throughout the season, and they've earned it. They've earned it with their offensive performance. They got the number one scoring offense in the league, and they stay balanced, and they run the football as good as anybody. So the offensive line is going to get that credit. But then Ed Oliver shows up yesterday. He has 10 pressures on 42 pass rush attempts. That's the most in the NFL by a defensive tackle all season this year. And so, you've watched games, and we'll watch, Chiefs highlights, and you'll see Chris Jones making plays and say, why can't we have a guy that does that? Well, Ed Oliver had more pressures in the game yesterday than any D tackle has had in a game all season. Now, can he consistently do that week in and week out? Obviously, that's unsustainable to say that he's going to, set records each and every week, or set, season records and benchmarks for guys each and every week. But it's just well, how did Sean McDermott say it after the game? There was a different focus. And sometimes it takes getting hit in the mouth like they did out in LA after clinching the division and two big wins over the 49ers and Kansas City. Sometimes it takes getting hit in the mouth to, re-examine, where you're at as a team, as a defense. And, obviously wasn't perfect defensively yesterday, far from it, but there was some encouraging things, and the play from the defensive line, and especially Ed Oliver, was one of them.
And how do you think the safeties and the corners? I mean, Kyer Elam saw a bunch of reps. Rasul Douglas was out. DeMar was out. Rapp was out. So, he had all these guys in, and they had to make do. Cole Bishop had to leave and then come, get an IV and come back. Milano had to leave with a groin injury. It was bad in the back end, and yet they held up enough to get the W.
Yeah, they held up enough. And without watching the tape and even watching the tape with the defensive coaches, I'll kind of just reserve myself to their judgment on their individual play. Now, I saw flashes from each and every one of them individually. Benford's still playing at a high level. Kyer Elam made a couple nice plays on the outside. Both the safeties looked really good in run support, gave up a little bit late in the game. But, we could talk about those 8 to 10 yard throws over the middle that Goff continued to hit. Well, I could sit here and say, well, that's either the linebacker's fault or the safety's fault for not kind of rolling down to that area. But the philosophy might have been, as long as they sustain drives here in the second half, they cannot beat us. We just can't let them score quickly. So I'm not going to harp too bad on those guys' individual performances. I will say after the game, I noticed a tweet that went out from Jamil Adai, the Bills, the defensive backs coach, who was praising Kyer Elam after the game, talking about how hard work pays off and way to go, champ. One, I loved, just how he chose to build him up, a guy that has self-proclaimed that he has had some confidence issues, and it has been tough on him as a first rounder to not be on the field. But then to have a coach lift him up after the game and praise him in the media, I thought was a really cool scene.
And then we'd be remiss if we don't mention the touchdown factory that is Josh Allen. It's ridiculous. 14 combined touchdowns in the last 3 games. Runs for 2 more yesterday, throws for another couple, and, continues to set records. First player in NFL history with 2+ passing, 2+ rushing touchdowns in consecutive games. Second consecutive season with 25 passing touchdowns or more and 10 rushing touchdowns or more. Kyler Murray, Cam Newton, the only other guys to do that all time. It just becomes, it's almost laughable. How many different records he seems to set each and every week. I'll put it to you this way, Eric. SportsCenter had Josh's chest pass touchdown to Dalton Kincaid that didn't count on their top 10. It didn't even count yesterday. He's just stupid. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's been fun to watch, and it's been fun to cover for years, but this year especially has been really fun. And you talk about that chest pass. My favorite part about the chest pass is before it's even caught, he's turning the other way. He did the Steph Curry three-pointer. I knew I made it, and I'm going the other way. No one even attempts something like that. And he's out there making these split-second decisions. Like, I got to ask him, like, have you done that in practice before? Have you done that in a high school game, a college game? Because how does it hit your brain in that moment that that's what's going to come out? And I know he's a freak athlete, and, he's so competitive and aggressive that I guess stuff like that comes out. But, I just want to know, like, in that moment, what makes you feel like, okay, I got to pull out an old basketball chest pass. I haven't played basketball since Fireball High School, but I'm going to chest pass this one into the end zone. But to me, and Sean McDermott said after the game, this is the best version of Josh Allen he's seen. And this doesn't need to become a bash Stephon Diggs, One Bills Live show. But to me, this year, it's become evident that there was times previously where he was likely forcing the ball to Diggs or potentially to Davis. This year, Amari Cooper leads the team in targets a week ago. He's got 0 catches this week. There wasn't a single issue throughout the game. Nobody cares. He's walking in the locker room all smiles. This is an unselfish group offensively, and Josh Allen can have different guys step up each and every week and simply attack the matchups. Chris, we talked over and over on the pregame about how they're going to be in base defense, and even if they're a nickel, they play the highest percentage of man-to-man defense, and they give up the most yards in the league to the slot. So whether that's James Cook or the other backs or Khalil Shakir or Dalton Kincaid or Dawson Knox, those guys got to crush this defense. Well, they did. The tight ends and the running backs combined for over 300 yards in the game. Ty Johnson goes for over 100 yards, where you don't have James Cook sitting there pounding on the sideline saying, why didn't we script that second play of the game, the wheel route to me? I'm the second round draft pick here. I'm the one trying to get paid this offseason. And instead, Cook doesn't hang his head. He goes for 100 yards rushing in the game. It's fun to watch collectively, and you could tell how much Josh is enjoying it.
So you got this quarterback since 2021. I just got this from Pro Football Focus. Since 2021, Josh has got 164 total touchdowns. It's 30 more than any other quarterback's got. 164 since 2021. Now, and all that's good, and Josh is this juggernaut. But yesterday I noticed something that maybe went under. Maybe it's been there, but maybe it hasn't. But it's not just me. Joe Brady was masterful in his play calling, his play design, the timing of those plays, the misdirection, some of the easy throws that Josh had, and also we saw about 5 or 6 touch passes from Josh. Some of them down the field, and then some of them like the Ty Johnson touchdown right after the Matt Collins kick return. Just the little touch passes that were evident that weren't there. I thought Joe Brady had his most noticeable good game yesterday.
Yeah, I rarely tweet during the game, but early on, after maybe the second drive, I had to just put the Joe Brady. I just wrote Joe Brady and a couple sweat emojis. I'm like, this dude's on fire right now.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable what he's scripted for this game. I mean, Josh was almost uncomfortable with how wide open guys were. He was either leading them a little too far or not putting it right on them because, you're not used to guys that are running that wide open in the NFL over and over. But, I think that he's made life easy on Josh Allen many times this year. And, if it means that the players got to stay home from the facility every Thursday so that Joe Brady can just sit there with his mastermind and just put together a game plan like that, maybe we could do it. It seemed like they had a lot in for this game. And, I'm not naive enough to not think that maybe a day away from the players where they're not in the meeting rooms and they're not on the practice field gave him a little extra time to maybe scour some more Detroit film and find some other matchups, some different play designs. I mean, what they were doing in the red zone, I mean, they put them in a blender on back-to-back series. You got the read play where Deion's pulling around to block for Josh. It's a walk-in touchdown. The very next drive, they hand it off to Cook on the same play. It's a walk-in the other way as everyone pursues Josh. I mean, it was a job well done. And, on all those tackle pull plays, me and Chris were talking about it, the interior of the offensive line has to do a good job to not give up penetration, to knock off those pullers. Well, the strength of the Detroit defense right now has got to be their 2 defensive tackles in Aleem McNeil and DJ Reader. So give those guys in the middle credit for allowing all those plays to develop.
Yeah, I mean, Deion comes out to block somebody on Josh's walk-in. There's nobody there to block. He had nobody to block. He's out there like, what do I do? He had
Yeah,
nobody
he
to
broke-
block. It was
he s-
crazy.
He slowed down and started walking and looking
Yeah.
at Josh, and it was over.
That was
It
wild.
That was amazing.
As much credit as we give Joe Brady, we probably have to tip our hat to Bobby Babbage because he had some changes in the game plan as well. The Lions subscribed to some heavy sets too. Coming into the game, they played 35% of their snaps in 12 personnel. They also use an extra offensive lineman, similar to the way the Bills use the jumbo package with Alec Anderson, and he countered with base defense. He put Dorian Williams on the field, and it really neutralized their run front.
It did, and they also played a lot less six-man boxes even when they were in nickel. Cole Bishop, where you mentioned it earlier, or you mentioned it yesterday on the broadcast, Chris, how Cole Bishop played around the box a lot in college, and he's comfortable there. And so the Bills were utilizing that. Just his second start, a team that loves to run the football and play in heavy personnel packages, perfect. Cole Bishop, you could play around the box where you're likely still most comfortable based upon the amount of snaps that you had in college. And so I love them putting that base defense package out there. One, because if you play Baltimore in the playoffs, you're going to have to, pull that defense out. Bills were so banged up at the time at the second level of the defense, it would have been hard to, put three linebackers out there who you felt great about in those situations. And so I love that adjustment. And, similar to how the Bills implemented that dime defense last year and got it going, and now they're super comfortable in that package. Maybe this base defense as teams bring in bigger personnel and you have an experienced linebacker in Dorian Williams, maybe you get into that a little bit more. Now, there's no piece of me that wants to take Taron Johnson off the field for extended plays. He's one of my favorite players in all of football to watch. I think he is truly great at his craft and what he does, and he shows up every week. Now, we got 3 games to go in the season. I would love to hear Taron Johnson as healthy as possible, as fresh as possible for the playoffs. So are there opportunities over these next 3 weeks to bring in that base defense? Maybe you just get Taron off the field 6, 7, 8 plays a game. Well, that's a decent amount of, non-risky snaps where you have your all-pro on the sideline and give them a little time off.
So a month ago, we're sitting here talking about this next stretch of games that look so unbelievably difficult. You're going to play the Chiefs. You got a bye week. You got the Niners, the Rams, and the Lions, and we're thinking, okay, you come out of there 2-2 at best, just trying to keep – and that's before the Bills have wrapped up the division. You don't know what's going to happen with the rest of the conference. Well, now the Bills, in those 4 games, they scored more points in each successive week. They started out scoring 30 against the Chiefs, beat them by 9, then 35 against the Niners, then 42 against the Rams, now 48 against the Lions. They're 3-1 coming out of that stretch. They've locked up the division. They're still the 2 seed chasing Kansas City. In the big picture, still a lot of football. You got another month left. You got 3 weeks left. Your thoughts about how difficult it'll be to get healthy and sharp into the playoffs and still give yourself that outside chance as long as it's on the table, the 1 seed?
I think it certainly is on the table depending on how this Mahomes ankle injury shakes out. They're currently an underdog, according to Vegas, against Houston this week. So apparently they think that Mahomes may not be able to play. They play on Saturday too, I believe. So one less day of rest. Then they turn around and go Wednesday against the Steelers on Christmas Day. Do you want to put Mahomes, if he's not fully healthy out there with that Steelers pass rush and defense, to potentially not allow him to play into the playoffs? I know they want that 1 seed just like the Bills do, but the Bills have 3 very winnable games. They got a 14-point favorite spread this week against New England. And so things could get interesting these next few weeks with that Mahomes, what's suspected to be a high ankle sprain. So we'll see how that shakes out. But, the Rams loss hurts. The Chiefs banking in another field goal and catching luck last week hurts as well. But there's still a shot at it. And I'll say this, if the Bills are in a great position now to get the 2 seed with a win yesterday and then a Steelers loss to Philadelphia. If the Bills are the 2 seed, I don't think it's a lock that in the divisional round the Chiefs are just going to advance and, the Bills potentially would be going to Kansas City. There's a shot that they could get beat, in the playoffs. The luck runs out and then all of a sudden we're still hosting games in Highmark Stadium. Now, the thing that's one of the most appealing things about the 1 seed is obviously getting that first week off, we saw what the first round of the playoffs did last year. The Bills just getting ravaged with injuries on the defensive side of the football.
Yeah, they lost Bernard and
Right.
Benford in the game against the Steelers last year and did not have them the next week. I think the other concern, too, is you've got Houston and Baltimore, who obviously have head-to-head tiebreakers on the Bills. They're 2 back in the loss column, and Baltimore has to play Pittsburgh this week. Houston, as you said, Kansas City on a short week. They play Saturday this week, so that's good in terms of getting Mahomes back on the field and not feeling 100%. And then on top of that, Baltimore and Houston have to play each other the following week. So they're going to knock one of those teams off and at least have a 6th loss. So, yes, I would tend to agree with you. It's looking pretty good there as far as locking up the 2 seed, provided the Bills take care of what are 3 very winnable games here.
Yeah, absolutely. That's the way I see it too. And, if the Bills could potentially go in that final week against New England, that could be one of those games where if the 1 seed's, out of play there, then you simply, rest some guys for that game and you're not overly concerned about it if you're locked into that 2 seed. But if Kansas City could slip up, if Mahomes isn't able to play, and even if he is able to play and he's hobbled, it's not like they've been world beaters this season. Yesterday, they were up by 3 scores in the game for the first time all season. They had not had a 3-score lead one time all year.
They also have not scored 30 points in any game this season. The Bills have 11 of those already. Yeah. All right, Eric, thanks as
Eric.
always for the time. We appreciate it. We'll see you out here this weekend.
Yep, sounds good. Looking forward to it, guys.